The Dragon Ball 30th anniversary website has recently posted what they are calling the official timeline, or a timeline, the Dragon Ball SSSS timeline. But there's problems, and I'm here to do this video to tell you guys about some of the issues that I've certainly had with this timeline, as well as what they're trying to say and just the overall canon debate. Like I've said many times in my videos, there really is no point in arguing canon in Dragon Ball, because especially with the more recent stuff like Battle of Gods and Resurrection F, the movies, Dragon Ball Super, the canon is pretty much out the window. There's a manga, there's movies, there's an anime, 3 different versions of the same story. It gets very confusing. But Dragon Ball SSSS, which is the 30th anniversary site, have pretty much been trying to kind of make things a little simpler, and what they actually did was confuse the hell out of people. Now, I'm going to be leaving a link down below so you can check out the timeline. You're probably wondering, but Geekdom, I don't speak Japanese. I don't read Japanese. Well, that's okay, because our friends over at Kanzenshu, as you can see on your screen right here, Herms did translate the timeline for us to look at, and we're going to look at these translations as well as the timeline here on this video, so I can kind of break down what makes sense and what doesn't make sense and why there are problems here, okay? Now, I'm going to leave both the links down below so you can read the timeline and you can read Herms' translation of the timeline. Now, what's interesting about this timeline is that this is not the first time that Toei and Shueisha have done this. Like Herm says, this timeline is basically a smaller, more condensed version of the one that was found in Chozenshu Volume 4. Now, I saw this timeline, the Chozenshu timeline. I saw it way back years ago, and the timeline made no sense. The timeline essentially took all of the events from the movies, all of the events from GT, all of the events that most of the community have considered non-canon because it's not in the manga, and they've put it here. Well, with this timeline, they've tried to streamline it a bit and make it a little bit easier, including things like Jocko and things like that, and of course the Dragon Ball Super / Battle of God stuff is in this new timeline, and they took out GT in the movies. The problem is that the filler that ties into the movies is still here. So this whole thing is a freaking mess. I'm just telling you guys, the timeline for Dragon Ball, even though it's officially on an official website right here, db30th.com, it still doesn't make any sense, and I don't think it ever will. So let's go ahead, and if you look at these pages right here, you know, starting with this section right here, which is the pre-Dragon Ball era, going down to the early Dragon Ball story arc, the Budokai, the Piccolo arc right here, the arrival of Raditz, the fight with Vegeta, the battle on Namek with Frieza, of course, the Cell arc, and then, of course, the Buu arc, followed by the Dragon Ball Super / Battle of Gods timeline, or time period, and then, of course, the end of Dragon Ball Z with the arrival of Oob and Pan and Bra. And it really is kind of humorous to me that there are still fans out there who have not been able to figure out that Dragon Ball Super takes place before the end of Z. I don't know how 8 months later you haven't been able to figure this out. It's after the death of Kid Buu, before the end of Z. That's why Oob is not there. But every day I seem to hear somebody say, oh, where's Oob? Well, he's not there. He's like 3 or 4 or 5. He's not gonna be fighting in Dragon Ball Super unless Super goes past this time period. But if you go all the way up to the beginning, there's already problems here. Now let's go ahead. I'm gonna hop over to the Herms translation, and Herms essentially starts it off by saying that the timeline begins 5 million years ago. The wizard Bibidi creates Majin Buu. Now this is already there's a problem here, because even though in the original manga Toriyama did state that Bibidi created Majin Buu, recently in an interview Toriyama did about 2 years ago, he said that no, that's not the case. What actually happened was, a classic Toriyama retcon, is that Buu has existed since the beginning of time. So this data is already contradicting what Toriyama had said recently. Follow this up by age 737, Kakarot Son Goku is born, Frieza wages war. Although Goku's father Bardock holds out, he's thrown into the world of the past by the explosion of Planet Vegeta. So now what they're doing is they're incorporating episode of Bardock, which is not written by Toriyama, and some fans consider that canon, some don't. Toriyama did design Chilled, but the story is not Toriyama's, and it's not referenced whatsoever in the manga, so how can that make any sense? Now, here's where it gets really stupid. It says here, Jocko the Galactic Patrolman arrives on Earth. Okay, that's fair. That makes sense. Jocko did arrive on Earth during this time. The only problem is they're saying that Son Goku was born in age 737, and if you read Dragon Ball Minus, you know that they retconned that as well and made Goku 3 years old. So Kakarot would have been born in the either age 734, or this happened in age 740, which would throw off the entire timeline. It's a complete freaking mess, okay? Right around age 739, God of Destruction Beerus goes to sleep. This is, of course, based upon what Beerus says in Dragon Ball Super. Now, I'm going to skip all this because this is essentially, all of this information here is essentially stuff from the Dragon Ball manga, stuff that, and the Dragon Ball anime. There's nothing really here that's strange or unusual. They do mention the filler stuff, though. For example, right here it says Goku and Chi-Chi hold a marriage ceremony at Mount Frypan. Ox King's castle catches fire. Then they go find the Bansho fan. That was only in the anime. That was not in the manga. However, those scenes in the anime do not contradict the manga, so they could be considered part of the official timeline. They could be considered canon, but they're not in the manga. So what they're doing here with this timeline, which really bugs me, guys, I want to know your thoughts down below, is they're basically putting in whatever the hell they want and taking out whatever the hell they want, okay? And here's where it gets kind of stupid, all right? So here we go on to the Dragon Ball Z time period. Raditz comes to Earth. Goku dies. All of this is fine. It's in the manga and the anime. There's nothing too contradictory here whatsoever. But then here in age 763, planet Makio approaches the Earth for the first time in 5,000 years. The revived Garlic Jr. battles Gohan and the others. So the Garlic Jr. saga, which is absolutely not part of the manga, not part of Toriyama's vision, not canon to a lot of people. Again, I'm not going to debate canon here. Is incorporated. Okay, fine, but why? If you're going to incorporate the filler arc, what about the movie, which should have happened right here at age 761? Where's the mention of the movie? Because you can't have a Garlic Jr. saga without... See, you can't just pick and choose your canon, which is pretty much what everybody does anyways, which is why we can't debate it. You can't have the Garlic Jr. saga without the Garlic Jr. movie. And there's absolutely no mention of the Garlic Jr. movie, or really any of the movies, to be honest with you. Moving on, then we have, of course, the Goku returning to Earth after the Frieza saga, and then we have the anime only. They actually took time to mention the driver school episode, okay? That made me laugh because not only is that infamous filler, it really has no purpose in being here as far as a major event in the timeline. In addition to that, they also mentioned Goku traveling to the Grand Kai's planet and meeting the Grand Kai and having the Anoyoichi Budokai, which is the Paikuhan or Paikon saga, or the 5 episodes in the other world. So again, they're putting filler in here. So it's almost as if they're having, and that's the whole thing, the reason I'm doing this video, they're having like an identity crisis here. They don't know what to put in and what not to put in because they're putting some of the filler. They're leaving out the movies that tie into the filler. They're borrowing from Jocko the Galactic Patrolman, but they're not borrowing from Dragon Ball Minus, so it's, again, it's a mess. So moving down, we have the entire Buu Saga right here, which took place in age 774, and actually, the whole Buu Saga takes place within a span of like 3 days. I mean, not the Grey Saiyaman stuff, not that stuff, but like from the tournament and the Majin Vegeta stuff all the way to the death of Kid Buu, that's 3 days. Then we go to what they are calling the Gods of the Universe arc, which is essentially Dragon Ball Super, right? Bulma holds a birthday party. Beerus awakens, comes to Earth in search of the god. They have the party, they have the fight, and Goku becomes a god. That's in age 778. And then here in the same age, Frieza is resurrected and invades Earth. The warriors of Earth gather off to face him. Now, we do know for sure that Frieza... Well, we know that the Frieza movie, the TV series, has all kinds of strange time jumps that don't make any sense, that aren't really explained to us. But we know the movie takes place roughly anywhere between 6 or 8 months after Battle of Gods. So it could still be in age 778, but if Battle of Gods takes place right around the summer/spring, wouldn't it make more sense for that to be kind of early 779? Then again, that movie also isn't in the winter. So it's very confusing. And then, of course, they're calling the end the Peaceful World arc, which is the finale of Dragon Ball, the manga, the 28th tournament. Goku meets Oob and takes him out on the journey, and that's where the story ends. So this is still an incomplete timeline. They haven't put in any of the Universe 6 stuff, the Champa stuff. We don't see anything with Zuno, which makes sense because that story is actually still being written and still being told, and they're not going to put that in there because that would spoil it for everybody. But nonetheless, guys, these timelines, even the ones that Toei themselves have created, do not make sense because there are way too many contradictions between the manga and the anime. And the thing that kind of irritates me is if you go over to the official page, they're using manga panels. No anime clips here, just this is all manga stuff as well as Toriyama concept art. You know, if you come down, you'll see Goku here. Toriyama concept art. So it's almost as if they're saying, well, all of this is Toriyama. This is all, quote, canon, where we're using the real shit here. But again, it makes no sense because they're picking and choosing stuff. Garlic Jr.'s there, as well as, you know, Goku's not 3 years old like in Dragon Ball Minus. So it's just, it's a mess. It's crazy. Anyways, that's going to do it for this video. I wanted to kind of share this with you guys about the timeline, my thoughts on it, when things happened, according to even Shueisha, Toei, even the entire company behind Dragon Ball. It's a complete mess. Don't fight over canon. There is no canon. Just enjoy the series. The best canon that you could come up with is the original 42 volumes of the manga. That's the original canon. Secondary canon could be the original volumes of the manga and then Battle of Gods, Resurrection F, and maybe even Yo Son Goku because Toriyama wrote that. That is probably the safest way to go when it comes to canon, because once you start putting in the filler, super, and things like that, it starts to get really convoluted, especially since they haven't given us an answer about exactly when super takes place. We have an idea based on this timeline and on what happens in the series that it does. I mean, we know it's during the 10-year arc, but we have an idea that it takes place roughly around age 778, probably ending at age 780, but then that contradicts what Bulma said at the end of the series when she said, oh, I haven't seen you in 5 years. So don't fight over canon, guys. It makes no sense anyways. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you guys down the road.